Hello everyone, wherever you are and whenever you are. Tonight we're going to be looking at a blue-white archetype that I have not visited in quite some time. And that archetype is going to be blue-white midrange. It seems as though this is kind of the latest control flavor of the month, or the latest hotness here in the blue-white control community. And the deck you see in front of you is not the deck that I'm going to be featuring, but this is just an example of a deck that I used to play quite some time ago, back when Infect and Affinity were kind of at the top of the heap. I think it was either a little before or a little after the unbanning of Ancestral Visions and Sword of the Meek. Can't remember exactly when, but this deck was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed playing it. It was extremely powerful. Again, especially in the matchups that I had mentioned. And again, yeah, it was a lot of fun. And again, that's why we're here. So this deck was based off of a list by SES, or Sentimental Engine Slayer, who was a a user from the MTG Salvation forums that I used to read quite a bit those years ago. So I always like to give credit when it's due if I know where it belongs. And so again, this was a deck that he had shared there. So really fun. Maybe we'll spin this back up sometime and and see how it stands against the test of time. Maybe update it a little bit. But tonight, I'm going to change gears a little bit here. The user Curryvore has been, and some others, have been putting up some very high-profile finishes on Magic Online with a blue-white mid-range list. And so there's a good bit of buzz about this, of course, over on the Facebook group, the Blue-White X Control / Midrange Competitive Modern group. And since it seems to be on everybody's mind right now, I figured we would do just a brief deck tech. I'll provide a link down below to both the discussion and a video where Francisco goes into much deeper detail on this deck than I could probably hold your attention for. So if you really want to dig into this, you can go ahead and see more information about the card choices and the what's available in the flex slots and everything there. So you can just jump to that link down there below. So as you can see, much like a standard control deck, we're running 25 lands, so quite a few lands here. We have our normal suspects here: the Celestial Colonnades, Fields of Ruin, of course, Flooded Strand, just to fetch up our lands and everything. Nothing too out of the ordinary there. It looks pretty basic, except for one exception, which is right here at the top. I'm sure you've already picked it out. The Cavern of Souls. And of course, we have a couple different creature types here, but Cavern can kind of fit, I guess, whatever your need might be, depending on the matchup. You could name it on Wizard, name it on Angel. We have some additional Angels in the sideboard, both Lyra and Baneslayer, but we'll get to those in 1 minute. So if you look at blue-white in Modern in general, on kind of a spectrum, where, say, on one side you have kind of an instant speed, completely draw-go blue-white style build, maybe winning with something like Secure the Wastes, or even White Sun Zenith, something like that. And then, so that deck is, of course, very ponderous, very slow. And then if you look on the other end, you have a deck like Blue-White Spirits, which is, of course, a tribal aggro deck with some good disruptive elements in it. And so that deck is trying to quickly kind of close down the game and disrupt the opponent. So it's almost like a tempo deck, I guess, where you just want to keep the opponent off balance just long enough for you to cross the finish line. So then somewhere in the middle between these two, and something like Caw-Blade would fit in there too, a deck which we will definitely play a lot of if you know who ever comes off the banned list. In fact, I already have my copies somewhere up in here just waiting. But anyway, So this blue-white mid-range deck falls somewhere, again, somewhere in the middle of that spectrum, where we don't want to draw the game out nearly as long as we would if we were playing a deck, even a deck similar like the Salvato list that I had been playing some weeks ago. But we're also not looking to just jump down our opponent's throat with these with Kitchen Finks or Vendilion Cliques in every matchup. Now, granted, there may be some where we have decided that we need to end the game as quickly as possible, and at least with a deck like this, you have the option to do that. With a deck like the Salvato's Miracle deck, you can't really do that. You can't just get frisky with Colonnade as soon as you hit your 6th land drop. Against most matchups, or it probably won't work out very well for you. So you have to drag the game out to a point where you can leverage your really, really powerful spells. But in a deck like this, if you start chipping in for 3 damage at a time or so, while disrupting your opponent with cards like Negate, manually couple counters here, and also soaking up damage with cards like Wall of Omens, again, which replace themselves, of course, dealing with troublesome permanents with Detention Sphere, and then a lot of your big hitters, like the Clique and the Resto Angel, of course, all fire at instant speed. It gives you kind of an entirely different angle to attack from. One that's also kind of maybe a little unsuspecting. I don't think maybe most opponents might not expect a blue-white deck to be able to kind of put up this sort of an offense. And again, I won't go too much into that. Francisco can, if you're really interested in the archetype, Francisco can explain it to you in a lot more detail. But Cryptic Command also gets kind of a more powerful mode in this matchup. And that, of course, is the tap all creatures your opponents control. Typically, in the blue-white control deck, when you use that mode on a Cryptic Command, you're basically just fogging and drawing a card, searching for an answer for your opponent's board state. With this kind of a deck, however, you can have 2 to 3 creatures in play and use the Cryptic to not only blank the opponent's attack step, but then swing back. And if you can Cryptic, snap Cryptic, or a Cryptic draw into another Cryptic, you can really start chaining those cards together and close the game out relatively quickly. So they open up some really interesting lines of play in this type of archetype. And of course, we still keep our Path to Exiles in as a removal because we're playing blue and white in the same deck, and so that's usually where you end up. Kitchen Finks, of course, the life gain is definitely not irrelevant, especially in the main deck. And I will say that the linchpin, sorry guys, I'm still getting over this cold. I think I've just about beaten it, but the linchpin of the deck is definitely Restoration Angel. This is the card that makes the deck function. So we have plenty of nice, juicy targets in the Finks, the Snapcaster, Wall of Omens, and Vendilion Clique. All cards with powerful effects in the matchups where you want them, and with Restoration Angel, getting those additional into the battlefield triggers can be a big swing in your favor. So, I'll jump over to the sideboard real quick. As I mentioned before, we have the 2 big angels. These 2 are just a dynamic duo. They're a house. I am playing the only one Lyra. Curryvore's list calls for 2, but I'm only playing 1. I'm a little tapped out right now for my online budget. Again, trying to get the channel up and running and everything, so I gotta just have some other considerations. So I am running the Baneslayer, but this should be another Lyra, especially with all these Restoration Angels. So I know also this debate or this discussion can be found on the Blue White X Control/Midrange competitive modern Facebook group. They discuss in depth the merits of Baneslayer and Lyra, either one over the other in the sideboard, or even just the 2 cards in general. So right now the list is playing 4 Rest in Peace, which maybe for FNM or maybe for just more casual play, I don't know if I would go with the all 4. I'm even considering trimming one and putting in a Stony Silence just so we still have that out. But of course, the graveyard is really kind of taking over. It's really kind of taking over Modern with the rise of Faithless Looting. That card is really pushing a lot of graveyard strategies. So I think Rest in Peace has never really looked better in the Modern format, at least in recent years. Of course, just counter speed here. So since we're a little light on counter spells in the first in game 1, we can board into extra counters if need be. And then Teferi is an interesting card as well. Really great in a control mirror. You can shut down, of course, all their counter spells and also their Termini and their Ancestral Visions. He's a very unique card, and it's a really fun card to play with. If you haven't really ever had a chance to do so or an excuse to do so, well, now is the time. Let's see, did I miss anything? We have one Celestial Purge just to deal with the typical rogues gallery of black and red permanents that just need to go away in any given game of Magic. And finally, and this to me is the gem in the crown of the sideboard here, is the Cataclysmic Gearhulk. So, of course, this card here from Kaladesh, I'm not really sure how much play, if any, it saw in Standard, but this card is apparently the cat's pajamas, and I'm eager to try it out here. So, not only is it an extra board wipe, but of course it's like a creaturized version of an older card, Cataclysm, which you can look that one up there if you want. It pretty much does the same effects, but without the body. It's in a sorcery instead, and it does not mention Planeswalkers because Planeswalkers were not made yet, and I don't remember what set that was in. But anyway, so here we have it on a creature, as Wizards has kind of been showing us they're more than willing to do, is put some of these interesting old powerful spell effects onto a body. And so now we have Cataclysmic Gearhulk. Now this is something that probably to some of you is obvious, but until I listened to Francisco's rundown here, I didn't even really consider this interaction. But when it comes in, of course, you choose a creature, an enchantment, planeswalker, and an artifact among all the permanents you control. Is that if you have an additional creature in here, you can of course pick this as your artifact. So I know it's kind of obvious, but I didn't notice that at first, and so you could potentially have this and a Resto Angel, or this and a Finks hanging out. Or heck, you could even sacrifice your Finks when this comes into play and keep another creature, and then you'll have 3 creatures and your opponent will only have 1. So this card, super stoked to play with it. Super stoked to see how it interacts and holds up against some of the decks here. This deck, I know I've been talking about it for a little while. Really hoping this weekend that I can run at least one league, but I really want to put this deck through a league again. I really like the tap out style. Where I guess things like sequencing are a little more nuanced than maybe in the standard draw go control deck, but we will see. So here's the deck, and again, if you want more information on the deck, please explore the link below. The community there is pretty friendly. I'm always happy to help. And then you can find lots of really interesting information and all kinds of spicy deck lists and card ideas and things like that. So. Alright, there's the deck, Curryvore's blue-white mid-range, and let's get to some games.